I travel alone quite a bit. Most of my friends either have busy schedules or cannot afford to constantly fly around the country, so I have gotten used to exploring places on my own. Because of that, solo trips have become pretty normal for me. On one occasion, I decided to fly to San Diego for the first time by myself. I had already visited most of the major cities in California, but San Diego was one place I had not seen yet. It had been on my list for a while, so I figured it was finally time to check it off. I booked a decent hotel, very close to downtown, so I would be near everything I wanted to see. While I was checking in at the front desk, I noticed a guy in the lobby who looked a little older than me. He started talking to me in a friendly way, asking where I was from, how long I planned to stay, and if I had been to San Diego before. I told him it was my first time visiting the city. He said it was his second trip there, and like me, he was traveling alone. After chatting for a few minutes, he offered to help carry my bags to my room, since he said he was heading upstairs anyway. It seemed like a nice gesture, so I accepted his offer and thanked him. He grabbed my bags and walked with me to the elevator. We rode up together and got off on the second floor where my room was located. When we reached my door, he set my bags down in the hallway outside the room and told me it was nice meeting me. He said he hoped I would enjoy my stay in San Diego. I thanked him again for helping me and watched him walk down the hallway. After that, I unlocked my door and went into the room. I placed my bags on the bed and decided to lie down for a short nap since I was a little tired from traveling. Once I woke up and felt more refreshed, I headed back down to the lobby. I was about to walk outside and start exploring when the woman working at the front desk called me over. She asked me what that man had done when we went upstairs. I explained that he had just helped carry my bags to my room. Her expression immediately looked concerned. She told me that she had noticed that man standing outside the hotel earlier. According to her, he came inside only moments after I entered the building. She also said she was fairly certain he was not actually staying at the hotel. Then she warned me that if I happened to see him again, I should stay away from him. Hearing that immediately made me uneasy. I hoped she was mistaken and that he had simply been a friendly traveler. Still, I decided it would be smarter to take her warning seriously. I left the hotel and spent the rest of the day exploring the city. San Diego was beautiful and lively, and I tried to focus on enjoying myself instead of thinking about the situation. After a few hours, I returned to the hotel to change clothes before going out to dinner. This time, there was a different person working at the front desk. Back in my room, I took a quick shower, changed into something nicer, and lay down again for a short power nap before heading out for the evening. While I was resting, there was a knock on the door. A quiet male voice followed, saying it was housekeeping. That immediately confused me. I had not requested housekeeping, and it was only my first day staying there. I figured they might have the wrong room. I walked over and looked through the peephole in the door, but I could not see anyone standing in the hallway. That made the situation feel even stranger. Then the memory of that man from earlier popped into my head. I wondered if it could possibly be him. Instead of opening the door, I ignored the knocking and grabbed my phone. I called the front desk and asked if they had sent housekeeping to my room. As expected, they told me they had not. At that point, I asked if someone could come up to my room just to make sure everything was okay. About 5 minutes later, a hotel maid knocked on my door. I opened it and calmly explained the situation to her and thanked her for coming to check on things. After that, I left the hotel and went out to dinner. Later in the evening, I joined a city lights tour and walked around several of the busier areas downtown. It was a nice way to experience the city at night. Around 10 o'clock that night, I returned to the hotel. Before going upstairs, I stopped at the front desk and explained what had happened earlier with the suspicious knock at my door. I mentioned the man who had helped me with my bags and told her that I, Was worried it might have been him pretending to be housekeeping. I asked if she had seen anyone matching his description walking through the lobby at any point. She said she had not. To help reassure me, she pulled up the live security camera feed from my floor. According to the cameras, there was nobody in the hallway at that moment. That made me feel slightly better. I thanked her and went upstairs to my room. Once inside, I changed out of my clothes and got into bed. I turned on the television so I could fall asleep with some background noise. Within about an hour, I started drifting into sleep. The sounds from the television slowly blended into my dreams as I hovered between being awake and asleep. At one point, I heard a door close somewhere, but in my half-asleep state, I assumed it was just part of whatever I was dreaming about. I did not fully wake up until I felt the mattress shift. It was the kind of movement that happens when someone sits down on the other side of the bed. I turned my head and looked over my shoulder. On the other side of the bed was a man wearing a black COVID mask and a baseball cap. He was climbing onto the bed and reaching toward me. He grabbed me and tried to cover my mouth so I could not scream. Somehow I managed to fight him off long enough to yell as loudly as I could. He kept trying to silence me by covering my mouth, but I continued to struggle and resist. I fought hard enough that eventually someone started knocking on my door. I screamed for help. At that point, the man must have realized the situation was no longer going to work in his favor. He let go of me and rushed to the door. When he opened it, a woman was standing there knocking. He shoved her to the ground and ran down the hallway toward the stairs. The woman quickly came inside the room to check on me. I was completely shaken and in shock, and soon after I started crying. Other guests from nearby rooms began coming out to see what all the noise was about. Hotel staff also rushed upstairs, and the police were called. Later, after reviewing the security footage, it appeared that the man had somehow managed to obtain a master key card that allowed him to enter my room. Because he was wearing both a mask and a hat, his face was hidden on the cameras. Even though they could not confirm it, I strongly believe it was the same man who helped carry my bags earlier that day. My guess is that he wanted to learn which room I was staying in, so he could come back later. It is terrifying to think that he may have successfully done something like this to someone else before. I tried my best to continue enjoying the rest of my trip, even after everything that happened. Still, it was an experience that will probably stay with me for the rest of my life. The hotel refunded the entire cost of my stay and moved me to a different room. Looking back now, I probably should have pursued legal action against the hotel. The hotel staff also handed over all of the security footage to the police department. Unfortunately, I was never contacted again to identify anyone, which most likely means the man was never found or properly identified. This story happened several years ago, sometime around 2013 or 2014. To be honest, I cannot remember the exact year because the entire experience feels hazy in my memory. Over time, I think I tried to push it out of my mind. It was during Christmas break when I was a freshman in college, attending a university in New York City. That meant I was thousands of miles away from my family, who lived back in Bulgaria. For those who might not know, Bulgaria is a small country in Eastern Europe located near Romania and Greece. People often say that safety standards and regulations there are not always the best. Ironically, this story ended up challenging that idea in a strange way. I was at JFK Airport just a few days before Christmas Eve. My plan was to fly home and surprise my family and friends in Bulgaria for the holidays. The airport was absolutely packed with travelers. The crowds made everything feel more stressful and complicated. After hours of standing in security lines, checking my luggage, and waiting around for boarding time, I was finally able to relax a little once my flight was called. The first leg of my trip was a flight from New York to Istanbul. The flight itself was expected to take around 8 hours, so I already knew I would probably feel uncomfortable and stiff from sitting in economy seating the entire time. Unfortunately, my seat was between two men. For context, I am a woman who stands about 5 feet tall and weighs a little over 110 pounds. Being wedged between two much larger men did not exactly make me feel comfortable. Both of them were easily over a foot taller than me and looked strong enough to overpower me if they wanted to. The man sitting on my right seemed fairly normal. He had black hair, wore glasses, and looked like he worked out regularly. He kept to himself and barely spoke during the flight. The man on my left, however, made me uneasy almost immediately. Every once in a while, he would quietly mumble things under his breath. He also had a habit of picking at his skin and occasionally letting his arm drift too close to mine. I noticed these behaviors right away and tried my best to focus on getting through the long flight. I kept reminding myself that in less than 48 hours, I would be back in my home country with my family. But that sense of comfort did not last very long. Every now and then, I would catch the man on my left staring directly at me. I could be working on my laptop, listening to music, or simply resting, and when I looked up, he would already be watching me. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself that maybe he had some sort of condition that made him unaware of social boundaries. But as the hours went by, that explanation began to feel less convincing. At one point during the flight, I was watching Season 2 of American Horror Story on my tablet. The season, called Asylum, focuses on violent criminals and patients in a mental institution. Out of nowhere, the man turned to me and started talking. He asked why I was watching a show that portrayed mentally ill people and murderers in such a negative way. Feeling nervous and caught off guard, I awkwardly asked him if he needed something. I told him it was a little strange to interrupt someone who was simply minding their own business. He stared straight into my eyes and calmly said something that made my stomach drop. He said that he thought it was messed up that people assume anyone who skins someone alive must be crazy. Then he added that maybe everyone has that inside them. At that moment, my mind started racing. I wondered who this person really was, and whether anyone else nearby had heard what he just said. I forced out a nervous laugh and pretended I was not bothered by the comment. But for the rest of the flight, I felt completely terrified. I even considered asking a flight attendant if there were any open seats in the back of the plane so I could move. Eventually, the plane landed and we arrived in Istanbul. The moment the seatbelt sign turned off, I grabbed my things as quickly as possible and hurried off the aircraft. I wish the story ended there. The rest of my Christmas visit in Bulgaria went perfectly fine. Still, the strange things that man said kept echoing in my head. When January arrived, it was time for me to return to New York. While packing up my belongings for the trip back, I started cleaning out my tote bag and throwing away random bits of trash that had accumulated during my travels. While digging through the bag, I found something that made my skin crawl. There was a folded note inside that I had never seen before. It must have been slipped into my bag while I was asleep on the plane. The message written on it said, "I wish I could see what you look like under your skin." Even now, I regret not taking a photo of the note as proof. About a month later in February, my younger sister sent me a news article. The story reported that a man had been arrested in Istanbul for several violent crimes including rape, attempted rape, kidnapping, attempted kidnapping, and first-degree murder. The photograph in the article showed the exact same man who had been sitting next to me on that flight. Reading that article made me feel physically sick. For a long time after that experience, I avoided traveling during the holidays. Instead of flying home, I stayed in New York for several years because the thought of getting on another long flight brought back memories of that terrifying encounter. In the winter of 2018, my girlfriend Claire and I decided to get away from the freezing weather by taking a week off from work and heading somewhere warm. We chose a beach resort in Mexico where the ocean was a beautiful shade of blue and the weather felt perfect every single day. The resort offered an incredibly cheap 7-day all-inclusive package. It included a large buffet, 3 different swimming pools, direct access to the beach, countless bars, an entertainment hall, and plenty of group activities and excursions for guests. Since we were staying for a full week, we planned to make the most of it. For the first couple of days, we stayed around the resort, relaxing and enjoying the unlimited drinks that were included with our stay. The land surrounding the resort was filled with jungle and long scenic roads, so on the 3rd day, we decided to explore a little. We took a private shuttle to the closest car rental shop. The driver who took us there warned us to stay close to the coast because some areas farther inland were known to be dangerous. At the rental shop, we picked up a small Ford Fiesta. There were no flashy sports cars there, just simple vehicles for getting around. The rental place was located in a small town about 5 miles from the resort. There was essentially one long road stretching along the coastline, lined with different resorts. Beyond that road, there were endless sections of jungle, along with the occasional small town. We drove south along that road until we eventually reached Tulum. To be honest, the town of Tulum did not live up to the expectations I had built in my head. Several of my friends had always talked about wanting to visit, but it felt far less exciting than I imagined. After driving around for a bit, we turned back north. Not long after that, we noticed a dirt road leading into the jungle, and curiosity got the better of us. We decided to drive down it just to see where it went. On both sides of the road, there was nothing but thick jungle that seemed to stretch for miles. We slowly drove down the wide dirt path, enjoying the scenery and a small sense of adventure. Claire started to worry about taking a rental car down a road like that because she did not want to return it covered in dirt. I agreed with her, so I turned the car around and began heading back toward the main road. As we were driving back, 3 men suddenly walked out from the jungle and stepped onto the road in front of us. Claire and I both said, "Oh no," at the same time, because we immediately sensed trouble. I stopped the car and rolled my window down slightly while one of the men approached. He began speaking to us in Spanish. I told him no hablo español, and the situation quickly became tense. Another man walked over to Claire's side of the car and knocked on her window. I told her not to open it. The man standing next to me kept repeating money, money. Then I saw the 3rd man move closer to my window, and he pulled a knife from his pocket. Without thinking, I slammed my foot on the gas. The car lurched forward as we sped past them. All 3 men started yelling and chasing after us, but of course they could not outrun a car. Our hearts were pounding in our chests after that encounter. I did not slow down until we reached the main road again. After what had just happened, neither of us had any desire to keep exploring. We drove straight back to the resort parking lot and left the car there. We decided not to return it yet, since the rental was cheap anyway. The next day, we spoke with a few employees at the resort who recommended visiting a nearby cenote that they said was beautiful. So we got back into the car and followed their directions down another dirt road that was very close to the resort. We drove all the way to the end of that road until we saw a sign pointing toward the cenote. We parked the car and started walking. We found the place easily, and surprisingly, we were the only visitors there. There were no other cars parked nearby. We followed the signs down a peaceful trail surrounded by jungle. For a short time, it was actually a beautiful and calm experience. Unfortunately, that feeling disappeared when we both began to sense that someone might be watching us. It was not just a feeling either. We could clearly hear movement and footsteps in the jungle around us. I told Claire that we should just keep walking. We followed the path a little farther until suddenly a man appeared in front of us. He started speaking Spanish. When I again told him no hablo español, he tried to switch to broken English. From what I could understand, he was saying that we should follow him and that he would lead us to the cenote. Claire and I exchanged a nervous look, but reluctantly followed him. After a few moments, it became clear that he was guiding us away from the direction we had originally been heading. We were no longer following the signs. Claire tapped my shoulder and pointed toward the back pocket of the man walking ahead of us. The handle of a large knife was sticking out. I quietly told her to run. I pushed her forward, and we both took off as fast as we could down the trail. The man realized what we were doing and started chasing us, but thankfully he was not very fast. We were able to outrun him without much trouble. When we reached the car, I thought he might stop chasing us, but the moment we got inside, 3 more people suddenly came out of the path we had just run from and rushed toward the vehicle. They tried pulling on the door handles and began slamming their fists against the windows as if they were trying to break the glass. Before they could do any real damage, I started the car and drove away. Claire was crying. Honestly, I felt like crying too. 2 days in a row, we had barely escaped dangerous situations. We decided right then that we were completely done exploring. We returned the car to the rental shop. Thankfully, there were no dents or damage from the pounding on the windows, only some dirt marks. After that, we took the shuttle back to the resort and stayed there for the rest of our trip until it was time to go to the airport. We also told the resort staff about what had happened so they could warn other guests. Neither of us has gone back to Mexico since that trip, and to be honest, I am not sure if we ever will. Even in an area that was supposed to be safer near the resorts, we had 2 close calls on back-to-back days where we almost ended up robbed or worse.